Picture this: the powerful Australian army, armed with machine guns and artillery, has been outwitted and outmaneuvered. How could this happen? Who is their foe? Well, their enemy was a flock of birds that can't fly. Yes, you heard that correctly. A long time ago, Australia's army launched a war on emus and was defeated. This is the story of Australia's infamous Great Emu War. Before we can dive into the war itself, we should try to understand a bit more about the emu. Emus are the world's second largest bird. They have shaggy gray, brown, and black plumage with blue-black skin around their neck and are only found in Australia, having been exterminated by colonists in Tasmania. They are omnivores who eat fruit, flowers, seeds, and shoots, as well as insects and small animals, and they're very nomadic creatures that migrate frequently after breeding season. Natural predators are scarce for this bird, and we might start understanding why a little bit later in this story. Although flightless, emus have vestigial wings with a wing chord of roughly 8 inches and a tiny claw at the tip of each wing. Emus flap their wings when running, probably to stabilize themselves when moving quickly. They can run at speeds of 30 miles an hour and have lengthy necks and legs. In indigenous Australian tradition, emus are seen as creative spirits who once flew over the continent. As such, they are depicted in astrological mythology, with their constellations created by dark nebulae between Scorpius and the Southern Cross. In the perspective of European settlers in Australia who struggled to make the soil feed them, emus held a different place. They began by clearing the ground and planting wheat. Their practices, however, placed them at odds with the emu population, which saw the cultivated area, which was supplemented with extra water for livestock, as resembling the emu's preferred habitat of open plains. Wildlife fences were efficient at keeping rabbits, dingoes, and emus out for as long as they were maintained. They were penetrated with holes by late 1932. As a result, there was nothing to stop 20,000 emus from crossing the boundaries of Western Australia's wheat-growing region surrounding Campion and Wolgaloogan. Prior to its clearance in the late 19th century, the Wheatbelt, which runs to the north, east, and south of Perth, was a rich ecology. It was populated by an increasing number of former soldiers who had come there after World War I to cultivate wheat by 1932. In the early 1930s, failing wheat prices and unfulfilled government subsidies made farming challenging. Their fields were now ravaged by emu incursions, which trampled crops and broke fences that otherwise restricted rabbit movement. Settlers in the region informed the Australian government of their concerns. Given that many of the settlers were military veterans, they were aware of machine guns' ability to fire continuously, and that is what they wanted. Sir George Pearce, the Minister of Defence, concurred. He directed the troops to exterminate the emu population. The official Emu War began in November of 1932. Sergeant McMurray and Gunner O'Halloran were deployed to the fighting zone, as was their commander, Major Meredith of the Royal Australian Artillery. They had 2 Lewis light machine guns and 10,000 rounds of ammo with them. Their goal was simple: annihilate a native species in large numbers. The military failed at first to make effective use of their ammunition after being forced to postpone their operations back from October due to weather scattering the emu across a larger region. On November 2nd, villagers attempted to herd emus towards an ambush, but they broke up into tiny groups. A machine gun that jammed stopped an assault on 1,000 birds on November 4th. Nothing went as planned. As soon as the shooting began, the birds dispersed into fast-moving, difficult-to-hit tiny groups. Even when the soldiers eventually find their target, the emus were able to resist many bullets to their bodies without even realizing it, let alone dying. The soldiers spent the next 3 days traveling to sites where emus had been observed, attempting to finish their mission. Major Meredith put one of the guns on a truck in order to fire at birds while traveling. It was as useless as their ambushes. The truck was too slow, and the travel was so bumpy that the gunner couldn't fire in the first place. After a week, the campaign had made little progress. An army observer stated the following: "Each pack seems to have its own leader now, a big black plumed bird which stands fully 6 feet high and keeps watch while his mates carry out their work of destruction and warns them of our approach." The emu sustained much fewer casualties than feared in each fight. Between 50 to a few hundred birds had been killed by the 8th of November. Major Meredith praised the emu's ability to resist gunfire, saying, "If we had a military division with the bullet-carrying capacity of these birds, it could face any army in the world." They have tank-like invulnerability against machine guns. On November 8, an embarrassed Sir George Pierce ordered the withdrawal of men from the front lines. However, the Emu annoyance had not subsided. Every attack was a colossal failure. Meredith returned on November 13 in response to farmer pleas and allegations that more birds had been killed than had been previously suggested. Over the next month, the soldiers slaughtered approximately 100 emus each week. According to the Melbourne Argus on November 19, 1932, when asked if there was a more humane, if less spectacular approach to carry out the cull, Sir George Pierce stated that only those familiar with emu country could realize the damage done. However, it came at a high price in terms of ammunition, which Meredith stated was exactly 10 rounds per confirmed kill. The effort may have rescued some wheat, but its effectiveness paled in comparison to the strategy of paying bounties to farmers with rivals. Farmers claimed 75,034 bounties in 6 months in 1934. For his involvement in the deployment, Defense Minister George Pierce earned the unofficial title Minister for the Emu War. Although a second, slightly more successful military operation was mounted against the emus only a few days after the initial retreat in November 1932, in the end it was the bounty on emus that proved most effective. Between 1945 and 1960, around 284,700 emus were killed in Western Australia. The so-called Great Emu War disasters were widely mocked in the press, and not just in Australia. The news quickly circulated around the world, prompting anger from conservationists as far afield as the United Kingdom. The ornithologist Sir Venti provided a humorous battle report. The machine gunner's dreams of firing point-blank into serried masses of emus were quickly dashed. The Emu Command had clearly ordered guerrilla tactics, and its unwieldy army quickly split up into innumerable small units, making use of military equipment uneconomic. After nearly a month, a defeated field army retreated from the conflict zone. Australia's emu population, however, remains stable to this day. Thankfully, they do not seem interested in resuming hostilities with the Australian government. How do you think the Australian army could have won this war? Let us know in the comments and make sure you like and subscribe for more Untold History.